If you're over 50, one of the biggest cancer risks building inside your body may not be something you can feel, point to, or even see on a scan until much later. It may be a silent, inflammatory state that has been shaping your internal environment for years. And that is exactly why so many people get blindsided. They think cancer begins the day a tumor is found. In reality, the conditions that allow abnormal cells to survive often develop long before that moment. I'm Dr. Caleb Rowan, and after years of studying how disease takes hold in the body, I can tell you this with confidence. Your age matters, your family history matters, but the terrain inside your body matters more than most people realize. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand 3 practical changes that may help lower chronic inflammation, support healthier aging, and reduce some of the biological conditions that make cancer more likely after 50. And if you're here because you want to protect yourself or someone you love, make sure you're subscribed, because this is the kind of information that can change what you do starting today. When most people hear the word cancer, they focus on the visible endpoint. They think about the diagnosis, the biopsy, the scan, the surgery, the treatment. But before there is ever a mass large enough to detect, there is usually a biological setting that either suppresses abnormal cells or gives them room to grow. That setting matters. One of the most important parts of that terrain, especially after 50, is chronic low-grade inflammation. That is a very different thing from the kind of inflammation most people understand. Acute inflammation is not the enemy. If you cut your finger, catch a virus, or twist your ankle, your immune system rushes in, increases blood flow, sends white blood cells, cleans up damage, and helps you heal. That response is targeted, temporary, and useful. It's like an emergency repair crew showing up exactly when it's needed. Chronic inflammation is nothing like that. Chronic inflammation is the fire that never fully goes out. It may not hurt. It may not swell. It may not make you feel sick in any dramatic way. But it quietly alters hormones, immune signaling, blood vessels, oxidative balance, and the way cells behave over time. That is the kind of inflammation that concerns me in people over 50, because it is easy to ignore precisely because it is so quiet. Here is why this matters. Your body is constantly replacing cells. DNA is being copied over and over again, and most of the time that process is astonishingly accurate. But chronic inflammation increases oxidative stress. It raises the number of reactive molecules that can damage DNA, proteins, and cell membranes. If that damage is not repaired properly, small errors can accumulate. One damaged cell is not a diagnosis, but over time, repeated stress in the wrong biological environment can increase the odds that abnormal cells survive when they should have been removed. Inflammation also affects immune surveillance. Your immune system is not only there to fight infection, it also helps identify cells that are behaving abnormally and remove them before they become a larger problem. Natural killer cells, cytotoxic T cells, and other parts of the immune system play a role in that surveillance. When inflammation stays chronically elevated, that surveillance can become less efficient. Some inflammatory signals may promote a microenvironment that is more favorable to cell proliferation, angiogenesis, and tissue remodeling. In plain English, chronic inflammation can help create the kind of neighborhood where dangerous cells have a better chance of staying alive. This is not a fringe theory. Researchers have been studying the inflammation-cancer connection for years. Chronic inflammatory states have been associated with increased risk across several cancer types, and elevated inflammatory markers, such as C-reactive protein, have repeatedly been linked with worse long-term health outcomes. That does not mean inflammation is the only cause of cancer, and it certainly does not mean every person with inflammation will develop cancer. Cancer is complex. Genetics, tobacco exposure, alcohol, obesity, environmental toxins, infections, hormones, and screening history all matter. But chronic inflammation is one of the major biological forces that can tilt the odds in the wrong direction, and after 50, it becomes more relevant, not less. That brings me to a word you may not hear in a routine doctor's visit, but it helps explain why the rules change with age. Inflammaging. It's exactly what it sounds like. Inflammation plus aging. As we get older, the immune system becomes less precise. It may remain activated at a low level even when there is no immediate threat. Pro-inflammatory cytokines can run higher. Recovery becomes slower. Sleep tends to become lighter. Muscle mass declines if it isn't protected. Blood sugar control may worsen. Visceral fat becomes more inflammatory. Add stress, processed food, alcohol, physical inactivity, poor sleep, or chronic metabolic dysfunction to that picture, and the body can shift into a steady simmer of low-grade inflammation. That is why some habits you could get away with in your 30s start hitting very differently after 50. Skipping sleep for a few nights, living on ultra-processed convenience food, sitting most of the day, carrying extra abdominal weight, constantly running on stress hormones. When you're younger, your body can sometimes compensate well enough that you don't notice the cost right away. After 50, that margin gets smaller. The bill starts to come due. And that is why I want you to stop thinking about cancer prevention only as something that happens in a clinic once a year. It also happens in your kitchen, in your daily walk, in your bedroom at night, and in the inflammatory chemistry your cells are exposed to every day. So let's talk about what you can actually do about it. Not fantasy cures, not miracle foods, not clickbait promises, real, evidence-informed leverage points. The first is an anti-inflammatory dietary pattern, and the best studied version of that for long-term health is a Mediterranean-style approach. I want to be careful here. No diet can guarantee cancer prevention, and food is not a substitute for appropriate screening or medical care. But large observational studies have consistently found that people who eat in a Mediterranean pattern tend to have better cardiometabolic health, lower inflammatory burden, and in several analyses, lower risk of certain cancers. What does that pattern actually look like in real life? It looks like meals built around colorful plants, beans and lentils, intact or minimally processed whole grains, extra virgin olive oil, nuts, seeds, herbs, and regular fish, especially fatty fish. It means fewer ultra-processed foods, less added sugar, fewer refined starches, and less frequent intake of heavily processed meats. It is less about perfection and more about shifting the chemistry of your plate. Extra virgin olive oil is a good example. It contains polyphenols, including oleocanthal, a compound studied for anti-inflammatory effects. That doesn't mean olive oil is medicine in a bottle. It means using 1 to 2 tablespoons a day in place of more processed fats may help support a healthier inflammatory profile. Leafy greens such as spinach, arugula, kale, and mixed spring greens provide folate, carotenoids, magnesium, and a wide range of phytochemicals that help support cellular defense systems. Berries provide anthocyanins and other polyphenols that help counter oxidative stress. Beans and lentils offer fiber that supports the gut microbiome, and a healthier gut tends to be associated with lower inflammatory signaling. Fatty fish like salmon, sardines, trout, and mackerel provide omega-3 fatty acids, which have been studied for their ability to help lower inflammatory signaling molecules. If you want a practical place to start, don't overhaul your entire life tomorrow. Build one anti-inflammatory plate and repeat it often. Half the plate vegetables, 1/4 protein, 1/4 high-fiber carbohydrate, drizzle olive oil, add beans a few times a week. Eat berries most days if you tolerate them. Aim for fish 2 times a week. Use nuts as a small add-on, not a mindless snack. And watch the breakfast trap. Many people think they're eating healthy because the package says whole grain or low fat, but they're starting the day with a refined, sugary meal that spikes glucose, increases hunger later, and does nothing to calm inflammation. A bowl of steel-cut oats with walnuts and berries, or eggs with greens and avocado, sends a very different signal than pastry, sweetened cereal, or a giant flavored coffee drink. The key mindset is this: you are not going on a diet. You are changing the terrain. You are making the internal environment less hospitable to chronic inflammation and more supportive of healthy repair. The second pillar is movement, and I would argue it is one of the most underestimated anti-inflammatory tools available to adults over 50. It is powerful because it is simple enough to be consistent. You do not need punishing workouts. You do not need a marathon medal. You do not need to destroy your knees in pursuit of health. What you need is regular, moderate movement that your body can recover from and that you can actually sustain. For many people, that means brisk walking for 30 to 45 minutes most days of the week. If that feels overwhelming, split it into 2 1-5-minute walks or 3 1-0-minute walks. After-meal walks can be especially helpful for blood sugar control. Cycling, swimming, water aerobics, dancing, hiking, and low-impact cardio can all work. The best form of exercise is the one you are still doing 3 months from now. Why does this matter so much biologically? Because active muscle is not just for movement. It functions like an endocrine organ. When you contract muscle, it releases signaling molecules called myokines. These compounds appear to help regulate inflammation and improve metabolic health. Regular movement also improves insulin sensitivity, helps lower excess insulin exposure, and may reduce IGF-1 signaling in ways that support a less growth-promoting environment. It improves circulation. It supports immune function. It helps reduce visceral fat. And visceral fat is metabolically active in all the wrong ways when it accumulates around the organs. This is the part many people miss. They know exercise is good for weight, mood, and the heart, but they do not realize that consistent movement may also help shift the exact internal environment that influences long-term cancer risk. That is a very different level of motivation. You are not just trying to burn calories. You are sending your body a signal every day that says, stabilize blood sugar, calm inflammation, preserve muscle, improve resilience. And please don't ignore strength. Even if your main goal is walking, adding 2 short sessions a week of resistance work, whether that's bands, light dumbbells, machines, or bodyweight sit-to-stands, can help preserve lean mass. Muscle is one of the most protective tissues you have as you age. The more muscle you preserve, the better your glucose handling, metabolic health, functional independence, and recovery tend to be. The third pillar is sleep, and this is the one many high-functioning adults underestimate because they are used to pushing through fatigue. But poor sleep is not free. While you sleep, the body does some of its most important maintenance work. Hormonal rhythms reset, immune coordination changes, repair processes become more active, the brain clears waste products more efficiently, and when sleep is chronically short or poor in quality, inflammatory signaling tends to rise. For most adults, a consistent target of around 7 to 8 hours is a reasonable goal, though individual needs vary. What matters just as much as duration is regularity and sleep quality. Going to bed at wildly different times, waking up multiple times a night, drinking alcohol late, eating heavy meals right before bed, falling asleep in front of bright screens, or living with untreated sleep apnea can all erode the restorative value of sleep. If you snore loudly, wake with headaches, feel exhausted despite spending enough time in bed, or your partner notices pauses in breathing, sleep apnea is worth discussing with your doctor. It becomes more common with age and can quietly worsen inflammation, blood pressure, and metabolic health. So give sleep the respect it deserves. Dim lights earlier. Keep your room cool and dark. Cut caffeine earlier in the day if you're sensitive. Try to keep a stable sleep window. And don't wear sleep deprivation like a badge of honor. After 50, good sleep is not laziness. It is biological maintenance. Now, if you step back, something important becomes very clear. These 3 pillars work together. Better food choices support better blood sugar control and a calmer inflammatory response. Regular movement improves sleep quality, metabolic health, and body composition. Better sleep improves appetite regulation, recovery, insulin sensitivity, and stress resilience. Each one strengthens the others. And that matters, because health does not usually change because of one heroic day. It changes because of repeated signals. That is also why I never want people to hear a message like this and feel guilty. Guilt is not a strategy. Shame is not a strategy. Information followed by action is the strategy. If your diet has been off, start with breakfast and dinner. If you have been sedentary, start with a 10-minute walk after lunch and dinner. If your sleep has been chaotic, set one consistent bedtime this week and protect it. Do not underestimate what small repeated changes can do to inflammatory markers, body composition, energy, and overall function over 3 months, 6 months, or a year. And let me add one more layer of honesty here. Even if you do everything right, there are no guarantees. These habits are powerful, but they are not substitutes for mammograms, colon cancer screening, skin checks, prostate conversations, lung cancer screening when appropriate, or individualized medical advice based on your own history. The goal is not magical thinking. The goal is risk reduction. The goal is to make the body a more protected place to live in. If you remember only one thing from this video, remember this. After 50, genes are not the whole story. The internal environment you create day after day matters. Chronic inflammation may quietly push the body in the wrong direction, but food, movement, and sleep can help push it back toward balance. That is not hype, that is biology. So starting today, simplify it. Build meals that calm inflammation instead of feeding it. Move your body long enough and often enough to remind it what health feels like. Protect sleep like it is part of your treatment plan, because in many ways, it is part of your prevention plan. These are not glamorous strategies, but they are powerful precisely because they are available, repeatable, and rooted in how the body actually works. If this video helped you see cancer prevention in a new way, take a second to like it, subscribe, and share it with someone over 50 who needs to hear this. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Which of these 3 are you going to work on first? Food, movement, or sleep? In my next video, I'm going to show you how one everyday breakfast habit may be quietly increasing inflammation in people who think they're making a healthy choice, and what to do instead. Until then, take care of your body with intention. It is listening to everything you do. I'm Dr. Caleb Rowan, and I'll see you in the next one.